Good night, and welcome to Huang's story. If you're listening on a phone, you can set it down somewhere safe and lower the volume until it feels comfortable. Take one easy breath in for 4, and let it out for 6. And do that once more, gently. Tonight, we're in ancient Rome after midnight. Not the Rome of speeches and crowds, but the Rome of quiet courtyards, sleepy doorways, and small routines that keep a city steady while most people rest. If calm history helps you unwind, you can subscribe now, and then you can stop trying and simply listen. You don't have to hold on to every detail. You can let the words drift past like lamplight moving over stone. Story 1. The First Round. Lamp, ledger, and a city that softens. The shift begins with the lamp, because the lamp decides the pace of everything that follows. The watchman checks the oil without drama, trims the wick, lights it, and waits for the flame to settle into a steady shape that doesn't flicker wildly. He likes that moment of settling, because it tells the body the night is stable, and stability is what the mind needs before it will let go. On the desk there are a few ordinary objects arranged the same way every night. The ledger, the pen, a small strip of cloth for wiping ink, a cord, and a little dish where wax beads collect if someone brings a sealed token. Ordinary objects calm the mind because they don't ask to be interpreted. They simply sit where you left them. He opens the ledger that has been opened so many times the corners feel soft, and he reads the last line from the previous watch. Not because he expects a surprise, but because continuity is a kind of safety. Last round complete. No alarm. Water clock steady. He adds the date in the local habit, then a small mark in the margin that tells the next watchman which route he'll take first, because the night is easier when it follows a known path. He writes one plain line that would never impress anyone, but still comforts him. Lantern lit, first round begins, streets quiet. He stands, adjusts the strap so the lantern hangs at a comfortable height, and steps out into a street that looks different at night because night edits a city down to essentials. In daylight, Rome is full of signs and voices. After midnight, it becomes mostly shapes, a few warm pools of light, and the sound of water in places you can't see. The lantern paints a moving circle on stone, uneven paving, worn edges, shallow dips where rain collects when the weather turns, and tiny scratches where countless feet have passed. He walks the way a good watchman walks, not stomping, not sneaking, just steady enough that the night stays asleep, and anyone who is awake knows he is there. He doesn't carry the mood of a hero, he carries the mood of a person doing a job that depends on calm repetition. At the first corner he pauses, and he listens for the wrong kind of sound, something frantic, something breaking, something that keeps going when it should stop. Most sounds in a sleeping city are short and self-correcting. A door creaks once and settles. A latch taps and falls silent. A distant cough echoes and fades. A cat jumps down and lands softly, then disappears. He checks the mouth of an alley where the lantern light struggles to reach, not because he expects a threat, but because darkness is where small problems hide until someone notices them. There is nothing there except the smell of yesterday, bread crust, damp wood, a faint trace of smoke that is old rather than new. New smoke would be sharp and urgent. Old smoke is soft and harmless, like a memory that is already cooled. He moves on, passing closed shutters and low doorways that belong to homes built close together, stacked above one another. where families sleep in the layered warmth of shared walls. Some households leave a small offering near the threshold, a sprig, a ribbon, a coin. More habit than superstition. Something people do to feel the boundary between inside and outside is watched. He doesn't judge it, because judgment is noisy and the night doesn't need it. A little farther on, the street opens into a space that feels wider at night because fewer bodies are in it, and wide spaces change the sound of footsteps. His steps echo slightly, then the echo dies, and he likes the way sound becomes quiet again, because it means the night is cooperative. At a small station where time is measured quietly, he checks a water clock that drips with patient regularity. It's nothing glamorous, a container, a steady stream, and marks that translate drip into hours, the way a slow tide translates into night and morning without fuss. He confirms that the flow is steady and the receiving vessel is not clogged, because a steady drip means a steady schedule. He writes, "Water clock steady, first check complete," and the writing itself slows his thoughts into a neat line. From there he takes the route that brushes the edge of the river air, where the city smells a little different, cooler and slightly damp, as if the stone is breathing. Near a bridge he pauses to listen to the water, not because he expects trouble, but because water has a way of masking other sounds, and a watchman learns to be patient where sounds overlap. He hears only the ordinary night, water moving, a rope creak from a moored boat, the hush of reeds, and then quiet again. On the far side of the bridge, he checks a narrow passage where footsteps often scuff the wall, and he notices a small puddle that wasn't there earlier, likely from a jar tipped over, and he steps around it so he won't track water back to a doorway. This is what the job becomes after enough nights. A series of small choices that keep everything from becoming a big story. At another corner, he sees a stray dog curled in a sheltered spot, breathing slow, eyes half open, not afraid, and he doesn't disturb it. He simply makes his lantern circle smaller by turning slightly away, because even animals deserve the courtesy of being allowed to rest. On a street that leads back toward his station, he meets another watchman moving the opposite direction. They exchange a nod and a few low words. Nothing dramatic, just the night's version of a report. Water clock steady, corridor lamps calm, river quiet. Then they pass each other without ceremony, because night workers understand that the night is easier when conversation is short and voices are low. He completes the loop, returns to his desk and writes, "First round complete. River edge checked. No disturbance." He sets the pen down as if setting down a worry, and for a moment the job feels like a lullaby made of routine. Story 2. The Bakery Token. Warmth behind a door and a quiet errand. Near a bakery, the street holds a faint warmth even at this hour. The kind of warmth that doesn't shout. It just lingers in brick, ash, and the memory of the oven. The watchman knows this corner by smell. Grain dust, a controlled hint of smoke, and the steady comfort of food prepared for morning. In daylight, this place is busy. Flour in the air, baskets moving, voices calling out prices. But after midnight, it becomes a soft pocket of warmth inside a darker city. He notices little signs that work is happening quietly behind the door. A faint, rhythmic thud that could be dough on a board. The soft scrape of a peel. A muted clink of metal set down gently so no one wakes above. Tonight he hears a low argument, not a fight. More like two tired people negotiating what is possible when rules meet real life. He doesn't shine the lantern into faces, and he doesn't raise his voice. He sets the circle of light on the ground, polite and non-threatening, and asks one question that is both simple and effective. Who is there, and what do you need? The answer arrives in careful pieces, as if the speaker is trying to keep the story small. A worker says they must leave early with bread, and an older voice adds that someone in a nearby house is unwell, and daylight crowds make it harder to get food to them without fuss or attention. The watchman doesn't ask for private details. Night work respects privacy, because privacy keeps the city calm. Instead, he checks what matters to the job: legitimacy and safety. He asks the worker to repeat the destination slowly, then asks for a household sign, a painted symbol, a carved mark, a familiar nickname, because households are remembered that way more often than by formal labels. The worker repeats it without stumbling, and the older voice confirms it from behind the door, and the watchman's shoulders stay loose, because this feels like an errand, not a trick. Still, he likes to be certain, because certainty is what keeps the night from turning sharp. He asks for a token, a stamped piece used by the bakery to confirm a legitimate delivery after hours. The worker fumbles in a pocket and produces it, slightly sticky with wax. The watchman recognizes the stamp impression: simple, clean, used often, the kind of mark that becomes familiar through repetition. He holds it near his lantern and lets the light glance across it, not because he suspects the worker, but because lantern light reveals what darkness hides, and wax can conceal a crack if you don't look carefully. It's real, and that small fact is enough to remove tension from the doorway. He gives one instruction, spoken in the calm tone that prevents excitement. Go straight, no stopping, keep your voice low if anyone asks. And if you see another watchman, show the token first and speak second. Then he steps back so the doorway doesn't become a confrontation. The door opens and warm air escapes with the smell of fresh bread and the faint sweetness of something set aside for morning. He sees, briefly, the inside: a bench dusted with flour, a covered basket, an apron hung to dry, and a worker's hands moving carefully as if the hands are trying not to wake anyone. The worker slips out with a small bundle wrapped in cloth to keep it warm. The watchman watches the worker's feet more than their face, because feet tell you whether someone is rushing toward trouble. The steps are careful, not hurried, and the watchman feels satisfied in the quiet way he prefers. Before the worker leaves the lantern circle, the watchman adds a practical aside. Tuck the bundle close under your cloak if the air cools it too quickly. Warmth travels through cloth better than through open air. The worker nods, grateful but too tired to show it loudly, and disappears down the street where the lantern light becomes weaker, then fades. For a moment the watchman stands still and listens, because he likes to hear the city return to silence after any interruption. The silence returns quickly, as if the city itself is practicing sleep. He notices, almost as an afterthought, a tiny bead of wax on a step where it must have fallen from the token. It is small enough to ignore, but he picks it up anyway, because tidy streets are safer streets, and because small habits keep the mind organized. He holds the wax near the lantern and sees the faint stamp impression softened at the edges, still recognizable. And he thinks briefly about how much of the city is held together by small marks and small agreements, tokens, seals, notes, nods, things that do not look like power, but keep life moving. He doesn't follow the thought too far. Long thoughts are for daytime. He returns to his desk and writes a quiet note in the ledger so the morning watch understands without needing a conversation. Bakery token verified. Early delivery permitted. Route advised. No disturbance. He adds a final line that will save questions later. Wax bead recovered from step. Stamp matches. Bakery token. Then he closes the ledger and lets this story become complete enough. Story 3. The bathhouse closing. Steam memory, cooling stone, and the kind of problem that shrinks when you treat it calmly. A bathhouse at night is not lively. It is the aftertaste of liveliness, damp air, cooling stone, and a faint scent of oil and herbs that clings to the walls the way warm water clings to skin. The watchman knows that even when the last guests have left, a bathhouse can still be a risk, not because it is sinister, but because warmth and oil and wood do not always behave if no one is paying attention. As he approaches, his lantern light catches wet stone steps, and the water on them reflects a soft shimmer, like the city briefly remembers its own movement. He hears the scrape of a bucket, the sweep of a brush, the quiet shuffle of sandals, working sounds, not social sounds. He calls out softly before entering, not because he is afraid, but because surprising tired people is unkind, and unkindness makes the night tense. A worker answers, voice low and slightly echoing in the corridor, and the watchman asks if everything is secure. The worker says yes, then hesitates, and that hesitation is the detail that matters. In a small pause, the worker admits a problem that is not dramatic but is real. The lamp oil delivered earlier was thinner than expected, and one corridor lantern has been flaring a little too high. It has not caused harm yet, but it is wrong. And wrong is exactly what a watchman is meant to notice before it becomes dangerous. The watchman steps inside only as far as needed, keeping his lantern low so the space does not suddenly feel like morning. The corridor carries warmth in its bones, and the air has that humid softness that makes sounds feel close and footsteps sound quieter than they are. The flaring lantern is easy to spot because its light is sharper than it should be, and sharp light has a way of waking the mind. He doesn't scold the worker. Scolding is loud, and loud wakes people, and night work is often shared work. He asks a practical question. Do you have the proper oil jar? And do you have a wick tool? The worker produces both and moves slowly, because haste spills oil, and spilled oil turns a small problem into a bigger one. Together they lower the wick by a careful fraction, and the flame immediately becomes calmer, less eager, as if it too is ready for sleep. Then they swap the oil, pouring with patience, wiping the rim so no residue drips, and the watchman watches not the flame, but the behavior of the glass and metal, whether anything overheats, whether anything rattles, whether anything smells newly of smoke. Everything settles, and the corridor changes from tense bright to warm dim, the way it should be at night. The worker exhales, and the watchman notices the worker had been holding tension in the shoulders, the way people do when they fear being blamed. He removes that fear in the gentlest way possible by treating the fix as routine. He asks what else is left for closing, and the worker describes the boring checklist that keeps the bathhouse safe. Ash moved away from wood, vents closed, benches wiped, basins drained to a safe level, lamps counted, doors latched. The watchman nods, because boring checklists are the night's best invention. They walk briefly past a furnace area where heat used to be stronger earlier in the evening, and the watchman checks for the simple things that matter. No stray embers near dry cloth, no wood stacked too close to warmth, no oil jar left open where a spark could find it. Everything looks orderly, and the worker's careful pace tells the watchman the person is tired, but competent. The worker explains how the thinner oil arrived, likely a mislabeling or a hurried hand at dusk, and the watchman suggests a calm solution. Mark the thinner oil clearly, separate it, and reserve it for lamps that can tolerate it, never for narrow corridors where flare feels sharper. The worker agrees, grateful for a plan that does not involve shame. Before leaving, the watchman checks the floor near the lantern for oil droplets, because droplets become slippery, and slippery becomes a fall, and a fall becomes a story no one wants in the night. There are no droplets. The worker has been careful, and careful is the highest compliment in a night shift. The watchman steps back into the street where the air feels cooler and less humid, and the city's smells return. Stone, dust, a trace of cooking, and if the wind is right, a faint hint of river air. Back at his desk, he writes a clean line in the ledger. Bathhouse lantern adjusted, oil corrected, corridor secured. No issue. He adds a second line because it will save someone else time later. Thinner oil marked and separated. Recommendation given. Then he pauses, listening to the way the night feels after a small danger has been reduced to nothing. And the feeling is subtle but real. A calmer darkness, a softer silence, as if the city appreciates a problem that never had the chance to grow. Story 4. The Messenger, the Wax Smudge, and the Last Notes Before Dawn. Near a passage where messengers sometimes pass, the watchman hears the soft slap of a loose sandal strap on stone, too rhythmic to be a threat, and too awkward to ignore. A young messenger stands in the lantern light, looking annoyed with himself more than anything, holding a strap that has come undone. It isn't a crime, and it isn't even a real emergency, except that a person moving quickly in darkness can fall, and a fall can turn into a bigger story. The watchman doesn't lecture. He kneels, keeps his voice low, and offers a simple fix. A short strip of cord, a tighter knot, and a slower pace for the next few streets. The messenger admits he is late with a note, and lateness makes people rush. The watchman replies quietly that rushing is how you lose more time, and he points out a safer route with fewer steps, fewer sharp corners, and fewer places where the stone is slick. As he ties the knot, he notices the messenger's hands are cold, and he gives a practical aside. Keep your hands inside your cloak when you can, because cold hands fumble knots, and fumbled knots break again. The messenger tests the strap, takes one careful step, then another, and the strap holds. He thanks the watchman and moves off with less hurry, and the watchman watches him disappear around a corner. Not from suspicion, but because he likes to see small problems finish cleanly. Back at his desk, the watchman opens the ledger to record the assistance, and he notices one line looks softened, not erased and not missing, just blurred, as if ink became a thin fog on the page. The street didn't change. The night didn't change. Only the record did, which is how he knows it is not danger but a work problem. And work problems can be solved without adrenaline. He breathes out longer than he breathes in, and examines the page edge under the lamp. There, almost invisible, is a tacky patch, wax warmed by lantern heat and pressed by accident, likely from the bakery token earlier, transferred to his fingers, then to the page, as easily as one story slides into another when you are tired. It is small, but small things confuse people later if you let them stay ambiguous. So he does the calm, boring thing that prevents future questions. He writes a neat note beside it, meaning unchanged, wax contact, corrected by note. And he copies the original line again just below, cleanly, so no one has to guess. He smiles once, barely, because the night has a quiet sense of humor, and because the fix is exactly the kind of fix he likes. Factual, gentle, final. Then he returns to the streets for his last round. Because the last round is not about finding excitement. It is about confirming that everything stayed stable while the city slept deeper. He takes a route that passes the fountain again, and water moves steadily, and the sound is so reliable it feels like proof that the night is behaving. He passes a courtyard where someone has left a broom leaning against a wall, and he sets it down flat so it won't fall with a clatter later, because even a broom can become a small alarm if it decides to fall at the wrong moment. He checks a doorway where a lamp has been left too close to a wooden beam, and he nudges it a finger's width away, just enough to be safe, not enough to wake anyone. He pauses near a marketplace that will be busy in a few hours, and he notices the stalls are still, awnings tied, ropes quiet, and the emptiness feels restful rather than lonely. A cat crosses between two columns and disappears, and for a moment the watchman thinks cats understand night better than humans do. They move with purpose, but without unnecessary urgency. Near the bakery street, he finds no sign of trouble. The warmth behind the door has cooled slightly, which suggests the ovens are being managed, and the errand is likely complete. Near the bathhouse, the corridor light is now warm and correct, not sharp, and that change alone makes the night feel softer. He takes the river edge again, because dawn often changes the air first near water, and he likes to notice the earliest signs of morning without needing to announce them. The river air feels slightly cooler, and the sky has a faint gray lift at the edge, not bright, just less black than before. Somewhere a bird calls once, then stops, as if it too is deciding whether it is time yet. The watchman checks the chain of a small gate, the latch of a storage doorway, the condition of a step that tends to be slippery, and he makes one small adjustment. He drags a bucket out of a walkway and tucks it beside a wall, because tripping is an easy way to wake a whole street. These are the last small corrections of the night, and he enjoys them because they feel like smoothing a sheet before you lie down, simple and final. When he returns, he writes the final line, last round complete, no alarm. He lowers the lamp rather than extinguishing it suddenly, because sudden changes feel like waking. Then, when it is time, he puts the flame out calmly and lets darkness return to the room without drama. Outside, dawn continues as a softer gray, then lighter edges on stone, and the watchman ends his shift the way he began it, quietly, carefully, leaving no sharp memory behind, which is, in a way, the same gift you can give yourself now as you drift toward sleep. Story 5. The Stairwell Lantern, a small domestic problem that stays small. On some nights, the watchman's job is about public spaces, fountains, gates, markets, corridors. And on other nights, it becomes quietly domestic, because the city is made of homes, and homes are where people sleep. Near a tall building with many families stacked above one another, he notices a stairwell lamp that is dimmer than it was earlier. Not out, just weaker, like a candle that is thinking about giving up. A dim lamp is not an emergency, but it changes a stairwell from safe to uncertain, and uncertainty invites accidents, especially when someone wakes in the night to fetch water or soothe a child or check a latch. The watchman steps into the entryway and lets his lantern light fall across the first few steps, and he listens before moving further, because stairwells carry sound upward in a way streets do not. From above comes a faint shuffle, and then a small, careful cough, and then the sound of a clay jar being set down gently, as if someone is trying to keep the night asleep. He calls up softly, not a command, more like a courtesy. "Is everything all right? Do you need help?" A woman answers in a whisper that is both tired and polite, saying she only needed water and the lamp is weak, and she did not want to wake anyone by asking. The watchman tells her she did the right thing by speaking softly, and he asks her to stay where she is for a moment, because climbing in darkness with a heavy jar is how ankles turn and jars break. He checks the stairwell lamp at the landing and sees the simple cause. The wick is too short and the oil is low. Not empty, just low enough that the flame is starving. Sometimes people imagine night work is about chasing trouble, but most of it is about feeding lamps, tightening knots, and moving small hazards out of walkways. He takes out a small oil measure from his belt pouch. Night watchmen often carry a little because lamps fail at the worst times. And he pours slowly, careful not to spill, because spilled oil is slippery and smell is loud. Then he trims the wick just enough, not too long, because too long makes a flame flare, and flare makes shadows jump, and jumping shadows keep people awake. The lamp steadies, becoming warm and calm, and the stairwell instantly feels less sharp, less uncertain. Up above, the woman exhales as if she has been holding her breath, and the watchman tells her she can take her time now, one step at a time, and he keeps his lantern low so his light does not feel like interrogation. As she descends, she moves carefully, jar hugged close to her body under a cloak, and the watchman notices how night teaches people to be gentle with objects. In daylight, people carry jars like tasks. At night, people carry jars like sleeping creatures, trying not to startle them. When she reaches the landing, she murmurs thanks, and the watchman replies in the same low tone that thanks are not needed. The stairwell belongs to everyone, and keeping it safe is the whole point. She asks quietly whether the city is calm tonight. The watchman answers with the kind of truth that helps someone sleep. Yes, it has been calm. Only small errands, only small fixes, nothing that will become a story tomorrow. The woman nods, and as she turns to go, a small child's voice from above calls her name, not loudly, just enough to show that someone woke and is looking for comfort. She pauses, and the watchman, without being asked, says one more practical thing. Take your time, and if the child asks why you were gone, tell them the lamp needed a little oil, because children understand lamps better than they understand adult worry. The woman gives a soft laugh, one short exhale that does not wake the whole building, and continues upward, each step quieter than the last. The watchman stays at the entryway and watches the stairwell lamp for another minute to make sure it stays steady. While he waits, he notices other small details that matter. A broom stored too close to the bottom step where it could become a trip hazard, a loose piece of cord on the floor, a small crack where water drips when it rains. He moves the broom to a safer angle, coils the cord, and makes a tiny mark in his pocket notebook to mention the crack in the morning. Because the night is for immediate safety, and the morning is for repairs. Then he steps back outside and lets the street air cool his hands again. He writes in the ledger with simple words that don't dramatize a simple fix. Stairwell lamp refilled and trimmed. Safe passage restored. No disturbance. And because he likes continuity, he adds, occupant fetched water safely. Voices kept low. Building quiet. It is a small story, and that is exactly why it belongs to the night. The watchman does not need big victories to feel his work matters. He only needs to know that when people woke briefly, they returned to sleep without fear, and that a lamp, fed and steadied, helped make that possible. As he closes the ledger, he thinks, just for a moment, that this is what sleep is, too. A series of small adjustments, breath, posture, softness, letting go, that keep the body safe enough to drift. Story 6. Dockside quiet, rope, tar, and water that never rushes. Before he lets the night end, the watchman takes one more route that some watchmen avoid, not because it is dangerous, but because it is complicated. The river edge where ropes creak, water moves, and objects can shift without anyone touching them. The city feels different near the river, cooler, slightly damp, and the smells change too. Wet wood, old tar, reeds, and the faint metallic scent of water that has touched stone for centuries. He carries his lantern lower here, because reflections on water can make light seem brighter than it is, and brightness wakes the mind. Along the edge, boats rest against the bank like tired animals, tied in place, and the ropes that hold them make small sounds as they adjust. Not alarming sounds, just the quiet language of tension changing. The watchman likes to listen to those sounds because they teach patience. You can't rush water, and you can't rush a rope settling into a knot, and you can't rush yourself into sleep either. He checks the first mooring post by touch, feeling for frayed fibers, because fray is the beginning of break, and break is the beginning of noise. The rope is rough, but sound. He checks a second post where a lantern has been left on a small hook, and he notices it is too close to a patch of tarred wood. Tar is useful, but tar is also eager to catch and hold heat, and heat is what the night must manage gently. He does not make a fuss. He lifts the lantern hook by a finger's width and shifts it away so the heat will not sit against the tar. This is the watchman's style. Correction without drama. A little farther along, he sees a stack of empty jars on a plank, and one jar has rolled slightly, pushed by a breeze that came down the river like a sigh. It hasn't fallen yet, but it could, and a falling jar is the kind of sharp crash that turns a calm night into a chorus of waking. He sets the jar back in line, and he wedges a small strip of wood beneath the plank so the whole stack rests more securely. Again, no heroics, only prevention. Near a boat with a low canopy, he hears a sleepy human sound, someone clearing their throat softly, then settling again. A boatman, half awake, sits up long enough to check the rope, then notices the watchman's lantern and relaxes because he recognizes the calm pattern of the patrol. They exchange a nod that says more than words would. Everything is fine. Keep resting. The watchman does not ask questions and does not share stories. Night is not for conversation. It is for quiet continuity. He makes one last check of a narrow path where stone is slick, and he steps carefully to avoid tracking river dampness back toward the main streets. Then he stands for a moment and simply listens. Water moves at its own pace, steady and patient. A rope creaks once, then stops. A small wave taps the stone and fades. The sounds repeat softly, and repetition is the oldest lullaby in the world. He returns to his desk and writes a line that is almost boring enough to be comforting. Dockside checked, ropes sound, lantern moved from tar, jars secured, no disturbance. And with that line, he lets the river become a background sound in his mind, the kind of sound you can fall asleep to without needing to watch it. Story 7. The Notice Board at the Forum. Messages that fade quietly into morning. On his way back from the river edge, with the cool, damp air still on his hands, the watchman takes a route through the Forum while it is empty enough to feel like a different place entirely. In daylight, it is a tangle of voices and business and movement. At night, it becomes a wide stone room under open sky, where footsteps sound like soft taps and then disappear. He prefers it this way because an empty space lets the mind unclench. There are fewer signals to process, fewer faces to read, fewer decisions to make. The lantern circle moves across columns and steps, and shadows stretch, not threatening, just long, like a slow breath drawn out and released. Near one wall, there is a board where messages are posted. Announcements, notices, small practical information that helps a city coordinate itself without shouting. At night, the board looks almost tender because the messages are not performing for a crowd, they are simply waiting. The watchman doesn't read every word. He is not here to gossip or collect stories. He checks the board the way he checks a lamp, for stability, for safety, for anything that might cause unnecessary trouble in the morning. A corner of one notice has begun to peel, and peeling paper is the start of litter, and litter becomes a slippery hazard on wet stone, and slippery hazards turn into falls. He lifts the corner and feels the tackiness of old paste, and he decides it is still good enough to hold if it is pressed back gently. He presses it with the flat of his finger, not hard, just steady, and he holds it for a moment so it bonds again. This is another theme of his night. A little pressure, a little patience, and then you let go. A city stays calm when small things are returned to their place. Next to the notice board, there is a small shelf where wax tablets and scraps sometimes end up when someone changes their mind about what to post. The watchman touches the edge of the shelf and feels the grit of dust, and he wipes it with his cloth in one slow pass. It is not his job, strictly speaking, but strict boundaries are daytime habits. At night, the best rule is to reduce the number of future problems. As he wipes, the lantern light catches faint scratches on the stone nearby, marks left by countless hands and belts and tools over many years. They are not important, yet they are evidence of time, and time is comforting when you are tired, because time keeps moving whether you worry or not. He hears a soft footstep and stops, not alarmed, just attentive. A man appears at the edge of the lantern light, holding a small bundle of notices tied with cord. The man speaks quietly, asking if he may post an announcement early, before morning crowds arrive, because he wants it seen. The watchman looks at the bundle and keeps his tone gentle. If it can wait until dawn, it should wait, because night posting invites arguments, and arguments are loud. The man insists, still quiet but more urgent, that it is important. The watchman does not take the urgency personally. He simply treats it like a flaring lantern, something to handle calmly before it grows. He asks a few practical questions. Is the notice official? Who requested it? And is it likely to cause a crowd? The man answers in short phrases: a sale, a meeting, a shipment expected. Nothing that should cause a crowd, only information. Information is normal. Crowds are what change the night's texture. The watchman considers the board and the stone beneath it. He considers the sleeping homes nearby, the way sound carries, the way a small dispute at the board could echo into a street and wake an entire building. Then he chooses a compromise that keeps the story small. He tells the man he may place the notice on the shelf, tied and ready, but he should not paste it up until the first full light. And if the man insists on pasting now, the watchman will have to insist on waiting. The man sighs, then nods, not thrilled but not angry, because the watchman's tone did not challenge him, it simply held a boundary. The man places the bundle on the shelf, and the watchman ties it down with an extra loop of cord so a breeze will not scatter papers like startled birds. Again, prevention, not drama. The man leaves with a quiet thank you, and the forum returns to emptiness, and the watchman feels a small satisfaction that has nothing to do with authority and everything to do with calm outcomes. He walks the perimeter once more, letting the lantern light skim across steps and low walls and the base of statues that look like people at night but do not move. The statues do not frighten him. They remind him that the city holds many layers of time, and that this night is only one layer, thin and temporary. He thinks briefly of the bakery token, the bathhouse lamp, the stairwell lantern, the dockside rope, and he realizes they all share the same shape, a small risk noticed early and reduced to nothing. He returns to his desk and writes a simple entry, because a simple entry is the night's style. Forum notice board checked, peeling corner pressed, bundle secured for dawn, no disturbance. Then he closes the ledger with care, because closing the ledger is like closing the day, and the body likes the feeling of closure before sleep. And outside, the gray edge of dawn continues to rise without hurry, as if morning itself respects the night's quiet work. Story 8. The City Gate Before Dawn, a quiet arrival that doesn't wake the street. Some nights end with nothing more than a ledger line and a tired stretch, but other nights offer a small scene right at the edge of morning, when the city is still mostly asleep, and yet life begins to gather at the margins. Before the first full light, the watchman takes a route toward a gate where early arrivals sometimes wait, not because they want attention, but because they want to be finished with their errands before the streets fill. The air here feels cooler, more open, and the wind moves more freely, as if the walls are taking a slow breath after holding the city all night. The lantern light does not bounce the same way on open road as it does on tight streets. It spreads, then thins, and the darkness beyond remains wide and calm. At a distance, he sees a shape that is not threatening and not sneaky, too steady, too slow. A small cart with a donkey, and a person walking beside it with the patient posture of someone who has been awake for hours already. The watchman doesn't call out sharply. Sharp voices startle animals and wake people. He simply lets his lantern be seen, a polite signal, and he stands to the side of the path so the approach does not feel blocked. As the cart comes closer, he notices the ordinary signs of honest work. A blanket draped over baskets, a rope tied neatly, the quiet smell of earth and greens, the faint sweetness of fruit that hasn't been cut yet. The driver greets him in a low voice, respectful, and explains that he wants to be positioned for market as soon as the gate opens with the morning routine. The watchman nods because this is a normal request, but normal requests still need normal checks, and normal checks keep everyone calm. He asks where the driver is heading, and the driver answers with the kind of detail that feels practiced and true. A particular corner near the market, a stall shared with a cousin, a small arrangement that depends on arriving early before the best space is taken. The watchman asks to see a simple mark, any sign that the driver has done this before, any small token or note or familiar detail. The driver points to the cart's side, where an old painted symbol has been refreshed many times. Not pretty, but recognizable. And the watchman's mind relaxes a fraction, because familiarity is the night's proof. Then the donkey shifts weight and makes a quiet sound, and the cart rope creaks, and the watchman notices a strap on the harness is looser than it should be. It isn't dangerous yet, but it could become dangerous if the donkey startles at a sudden sound, or if the cart hits a rough patch of stone. The watchman does what he always does when he sees a small risk. He reduces it. He asks the driver to hold the donkey calm, and he steps close enough to tighten the strap, not tugging too hard, not making the animal feel trapped, just steadying the harness until the rope sits correctly again. The donkey's ears flick once, then settle, and the driver murmurs thanks as if grateful not only for the fix, but for the calm way the fix was done. This is the watchman's style. Nothing abrupt, nothing loud, nothing that turns a peaceful moment into a story. While they wait, the watchman explains, softly, how the gate routine works. When the chain is lifted, when the latch is checked, how the first opening is done slowly so metal does not bang, because banging is the sound that tells everyone to wake up. The driver nods, and both men fall into a silence that is comfortable, the kind of silence people share when they are tired and there is nothing to argue about. The watchman looks up and notices the sky has changed again, a little lighter at the edges, the gray becoming softer, as if someone has diluted the darkness with water. A bird calls once and then stops, and the sound feels less like an announcement and more like a test, as if nature is checking whether the city is ready. The watchman checks the gate chain by touch, feeling the links, confirming they are seated correctly. He checks the latch, then checks it again, because repetition prevents mistakes. Then he does something gentle and practical. He places his lantern in a position where it lights the latch and chain without shining into nearby windows. Even near a gate, there are homes that could wake if a lantern glares, and the watchman prefers to keep other people's sleep intact. The driver shifts a basket slightly, and a faint smell of herbs rises, clean and calming. And the watchman notices how the simplest scents can make the mind feel grounded. Earth, leaves, fruit, rope, wood, and cool air. These are not dramatic things, and that is why they are so soothing. As the first fuller light appears, another figure arrives in the distance. Just one more early worker, and then another, and the edge of the city begins to gather quietly without becoming a crowd. The watchman waits until the proper moment, then begins the gate opening as he described it, slowly, carefully, without clang or bang. The chain lifts, the latch releases, the gate moves with controlled weight, and the sound is more like a deep sigh than a crash. The driver guides the donkey forward at a steady pace, wheels rolling quietly, and the watchman steps aside again so passage feels easy, not forced. One by one, early arrivals enter with the same sleepy courtesy, and the watchman feels satisfied, because a good morning begins like a good night ends. Gently. After the small procession, he closes what must be closed, secures what must be secured, and he returns to his desk to write a final line that will never be celebrated, but will help the next person understand the night's shape. Gate check complete. Early market arrivals admitted calmly. Harness strap tightened. No disturbance. And with that, he allows the story to finish, because finishing is part of rest, and rest is what we are building toward now. Good night. The night work is finished now, and you don't need to hold any of it in your mind. You don't need to keep track of the rounds, or remember the bakery doorway, or replay the corridor lantern, or wonder what the messenger wrote in his note. Let the whole night simplify into a few gentle images that ask nothing of you. Warm lamplight, cool stone, and water sound in the distance. If you're still awake, that's okay. There is no deadline here, and there is nothing you have to achieve to deserve rest. Take a gentle breath in for 3, and let it out for 6. And do that once more. Let the longer exhale be the signal. Shoulders soften on the exhale. Jaw loosens on the exhale. Tongue rests on the exhale. Now let your attention move across your face like a warm cloth smoothing a crease. Forehead soft. Eyelids heavy. Jaw relaxed. Cheeks loose. Lips resting naturally. Let the neck feel wider, and let the shoulders drop by a small amount. Not a performance, just a tiny release, as if you have set down a bag you forgot you were carrying. Let your arms feel comfortably heavy, hands unclenching without effort, fingers uncurling in their own time. Let your chest rise and fall in a small, natural motion, and let your stomach soften, as if it no longer needs to hold anything up. Let your legs be supported, feet relaxed, and notice how the bed or chair holds you without asking anything back. If you notice tension somewhere, you don't need to fight it. You can make it less important, the way the watchman made small problems less important by handling them calmly and then moving on. Now imagine the lantern from the story. Not bright, just warm, placed in a wall niche so it does not swing and does not demand attention. In your mind, that wall niche becomes a small shelf. Each thought becomes a small object you can set there for later. A plan becomes a folded note. A worry becomes a pebble. A memory becomes a ribbon. A question becomes a coin. A tiny regret becomes a bead of wax. You set one down, then another, with no judgment, because you are not throwing anything away, only setting it down. The shelf will still be there tomorrow. Tonight is for quiet. If your mind produces thoughts quickly, that is fine. You can place them quickly too, without reading them and without solving them. Now return to the simplest sound in the city, water. A fountain running steadily somewhere you do not need to locate. Drip, pause, drip, pause. Then the same steady rhythm again. You don't need to count it. You can let it be background. Breathe in gently for 3 and out for 6. And let the exhale be like water settling in a basin, becoming still after movement. If you want an image, imagine the fountain's surface in lamplight, a soft shimmer that changes slowly and never surprises you. If your mind tries to sharpen the picture, let it blur again, because blurred is easier, and easier is closer to sleep. Now we'll do a gentle walkthrough of the night, but we'll do it like a dream, with fewer details each time. First, picture a street, stone underfoot, a quiet doorway, a shutter, a corner. Then let the picture simplify. Only the lantern and the stones. Then simpler, only warm light and the idea of a path. Then simpler, only warmth. And then even warmth can become just comfort, the feeling of being safe where you are. Now picture 5 ordinary objects from the night, one at a time, without using them and without thinking ahead. The lantern, the ledger, a door latch, a cord, a small wax bead. The lantern glows softly. The ledger rests closed. The latch stays calm and quiet. The cord lies still, not needed right now. The wax bead is small and harmless, just a reminder that tiny things don't have to become big stories. Now return to your breathing, easy and natural. In for 3, out for 6. In for 3, out for 6. No need for perfect timing. Each longer exhale is a quiet message to the body. It is safe to become heavier. Now let your attention go to sound for a moment. Imagine distant water first. Then imagine a softer sound, cloth moving, like a cloak shifting gently when someone changes position. Then imagine a softer sound still, the pause between drops, the pause between breaths. Pauses are where sleep begins, because pauses are where the mind stops working. If a sentence catches your attention, that's fine. If you miss 5 minutes, even better. Missing minutes means your mind is doing less work, which is exactly what the night is for. Now choose one phrase for the rest of the night, simple and kind. Complete enough. The ledger is complete enough. The streets are quiet enough. The lamps are steady enough. The city is safe enough, and you are rested enough to stop trying. You do not need a perfect night, only a calmer night than before. You do not need to force sleep, you only need to make room for it. Let the day's conversations become quieter. Let the day's plans stand farther away, like buildings seen in fog. Present, but not demanding. If you find yourself thinking about a problem, you can treat it like the flaring lantern. Notice it. Adjust one small thing, and then stop feeding it attention. Tonight, you are not required to solve your life. Tonight, you are only required to rest. In a moment, the narration will become more repetitive on purpose. You don't have to follow it closely. You can let it wash over you like water sound in a courtyard, present but not demanding. And if you drift, if you lose the thread, if you wake briefly and find the words continuing, that is fine too. The words are not a test. They are simply a gentle background until sleep arrives whenever it wants. Now we can do a small release again, very lightly. On the next exhale, let your shoulders drop by one more small degree. On the next exhale, let your jaw feel looser, as if it is no longer holding a conversation. On the next exhale, let your hands feel heavier, as if they have permission to stop gripping. And then let your breathing return to normal without effort. If thoughts return, place them on the shelf again. Folded note, pebble, ribbon, coin, wax bead. No judgment, just placement. Wide and soft attention, like looking at a lantern from far away rather than up close. The story can blur more now, and blurring is allowed. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. Now we can do a small release again, very lightly. On the next exhale, let your shoulders drop by one more small degree. On the next exhale, let your jaw feel looser, as if it is no longer holding a conversation. On the next exhale, let your hands feel heavier, as if they have permission to stop gripping. And then let your breathing return to normal without effort. If thoughts return, place them on the shelf again. Folded note, pebble, ribbon, coin, wax bead. No judgment, just placement. Wide and soft attention, like looking at a lantern from far away rather than up close. The story can blur more now, and blurring is allowed. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. Now we can do a small release again, very lightly. On the next exhale, let your shoulders drop by one more small degree. On the next exhale, let your jaw feel looser, as if it is no longer holding a conversation. On the next exhale, let your hands feel heavier, as if they have permission to stop gripping. And then let your breathing return to normal without effort. If thoughts return, place them on the shelf again. Folded note, pebble, ribbon, coin, wax bead. No judgment, just placement. Wide and soft attention, like looking at a lantern from far away rather than up close. The story can blur more now, and blurring is allowed. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. Now we can do a small release again, very lightly. On the next exhale, let your shoulders drop by one more small degree. On the next exhale, let your jaw feel looser, as if it is no longer holding a conversation. On the next exhale, let your hands feel heavier, as if they have permission to stop gripping. And then let your breathing return to normal, without effort. If thoughts return, place them on the shelf again. Folded note, pebble, ribbon, coin, wax bead. No judgment, just placement. Wide and soft attention, like looking at a lantern from far away rather than up close. The story can blur more now, and blurring is allowed. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. Now we can do a small release again, very lightly. On the next exhale, let your shoulders drop by one more small degree. On the next exhale, let your jaw feel looser, as if it is no longer holding a conversation. On the next exhale, let your hands feel heavier, as if they have permission to stop gripping. And then let your breathing return to normal, without effort. If thoughts return, place them on the shelf again. Folded note, pebble, ribbon, coin, wax bead. No judgment, just placement. Wide and soft attention, like looking at a lantern from far away rather than up close. The story can blur more now, and blurring is allowed. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. Now we can do a small release again, very lightly. On the next exhale, let your shoulders drop by one more small degree. On the next exhale, let your jaw feel looser, as if it is no longer holding a conversation. On the next exhale, let your hands feel heavier, as if they have permission to stop gripping. And then let your breathing return to normal without effort. If thoughts return, place them on the shelf again. Folded note, pebble, ribbon, coin, wax bead. No judgment, just placement. Wide and soft attention, like looking at a lantern from far away rather than up close. The story can blur more now, and blurring is allowed. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. Now we can do a small release again, very lightly. On the next exhale, let your shoulders drop by one more small degree. On the next exhale, let your jaw feel looser, as if it is no longer holding a conversation. On the next exhale, let your hands feel heavier, as if they have permission to stop gripping. And then let your breathing return to normal without effort. If thoughts return, place them on the shelf again. Folded note, pebble, ribbon, coin, wax bead. No judgment, just placement. Wide and soft attention, like looking at a lantern from far away rather than up close. The story can blur more now, and blurring is allowed. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. Now we can do a small release again, very lightly. On the next exhale, let your shoulders drop by one more small degree. On the next exhale, let your jaw feel looser, as if it is no longer holding a conversation. On the next exhale, let your hands feel heavier, as if they have permission to stop gripping. And then let your breathing return to normal without effort. If thoughts return, place them on the shelf again. Folded note, pebble, ribbon, coin, wax bead. No judgment, just placement. Wide and soft attention, like looking at a lantern from far away rather than up close. The story can blur more now, and blurring is allowed. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. Now we can do a small release again, very lightly. On the next exhale, let your shoulders drop by one more small degree. On the next exhale, let your jaw feel looser, as if it is no longer holding a conversation. On the next exhale, let your hands feel heavier, as if they have permission to stop gripping. And then let your breathing return to normal without effort. If thoughts return, place them on the shelf again. Folded note, pebble, ribbon, coin, wax bead. No judgment, just placement. Wide and soft attention, like looking at a lantern from far away rather than up close. The story can blur more now, and blurring is allowed. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. Now we can do a small release again, very lightly. On the next exhale, let your shoulders drop by one more small degree. On the next exhale, let your jaw feel looser, as if it is no longer holding a conversation. On the next exhale, let your hands feel heavier, as if they have permission to stop gripping. And then let your breathing return to normal without effort. If thoughts return, place them on the shelf again. Folded note, pebble, ribbon, coin, wax bead. No judgment, just placement. Wide and soft attention, like looking at a lantern from far away rather than up close. The story can blur more now, and blurring is allowed. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. We can repeat the same gentle release again, because repetition is soothing. On the next exhale, let your shoulders drop a little. On the next exhale, let your jaw feel loose. On the next exhale, let your hands feel heavier. Then let your breathing be natural again. If thoughts return, place them on the shelf again, quietly. Folded note, pebble, ribbon, coin, wax bead. No judgment, just placement. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. Now imagine the lantern light getting softer, as if someone is turning it down very slowly. Nothing becomes dark suddenly. It becomes gentler. And as it becomes gentler, you can become gentler too. Let the room you're in feel steady. Let the surface supporting you feel reliable. Let your breath be the only thing you follow, lightly, like following the sound of water without needing to find the fountain. In for 3, out for 6, and then a natural breath. Shoulders soften, jaw loosens, hands become heavier. If a thought appears, set it down on the shelf and return to the water sound. Warm lamplight, cool stone, steady drip, steady breath. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. In for 3, out for 6, and then a natural breath. Shoulders soften, jaw loosens, hands become heavier. If a thought appears, set it down on the shelf and return to the water sound. Warm lamplight, cool stone, steady drip, steady breath. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. In for 3, out for 6, and then a natural breath. Shoulders soften, jaw loosens, hands become heavier. If a thought appears, set it down on the shelf and return to the water sound. Warm lamplight, cool stone, steady drip, steady breath. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. In for 3, out for 6, and then a natural breath. Shoulders soften, jaw loosens, hands become heavier. If a thought appears, set it down on the shelf and return to the water sound. Warm lamplight, cool stone, steady drip, steady breath. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. In for 3, out for 6, and then a natural breath. Shoulders soften, jaw loosens, hands become heavier. If a thought appears, set it down on the shelf and return to the water sound. Warm lamplight, cool stone, steady drip, steady breath. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. In for 3, out for 6, and then a natural breath. Shoulders soften, jaw loosens, hands become heavier. If a thought appears, set it down on the shelf and return to the water sound. Warm lamplight, cool stone, steady drip, steady breath. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. In for 3, out for 6, and then a natural breath. Shoulders soften, jaw loosens, hands become heavier. If a thought appears, set it down on the shelf and return to the water sound. Warm lamplight, cool stone, steady drip, steady breath. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. In for 3, out for 6, and then a natural breath. Shoulders soften, jaw loosens, hands become heavier. If a thought appears, set it down on the shelf and return to the water sound. Warm lamplight, cool stone, steady drip, steady breath. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. In for 3, out for 6, and then a natural breath. Shoulders soften, jaw loosens, hands become heavier. If a thought appears, set it down on the shelf and return to the water sound. Warm lamplight, cool stone, steady drip, steady breath. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. In for 3, out for 6, and then a natural breath. Shoulders soften, jaw loosens, hands become heavier. If a thought appears, set it down on the shelf and return to the water sound. Warm lamplight, cool stone, steady drip, steady breath. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. In for 3, out for 6, and then a natural breath. Shoulders soften, jaw loosens, hands become heavier. If a thought appears, set it down on the shelf and return to the water sound. Warm lamplight, cool stone, steady drip, steady breath. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. In for 3, out for 6, and then a natural breath. Shoulders soften, jaw loosens, hands become heavier. If a thought appears, set it down on the shelf and return to the water sound. Warm lamplight, cool stone, steady drip, steady breath. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. In for 3, out for 6, and then a natural breath. Shoulders soften, jaw loosens, hands become heavier. If a thought appears, set it down on the shelf and return to the water sound. Warm lamplight, cool stone, steady drip, steady breath. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. In for 3, out for 6, and then a natural breath. Shoulders soften, jaw loosens, hands become heavier. If a thought appears, set it down on the shelf and return to the water sound. Warm lamplight, cool stone, steady drip, steady breath. complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. In for 3, out for 6, and then a natural breath. Shoulders soften, jaw loosens, hands become heavier. If a thought appears, set it down on the shelf and return to the water sound. Warm lamplight, cool stone, steady drip, steady breath. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. Now we can drift even more slowly. If you like, imagine you are standing at the edge of the forum again. But you do not need to walk anywhere. Just notice a few gentle details and let them pass. Notice the stone underfoot, cool and steady. Notice the lantern light, warm and small. Notice the sound of water far away, steady and patient. Notice the pause between drops. Notice the pause between breaths. Now we can do a very soft count that is not strict and not a task, only a rhythm. 1 breath in, 1 breath out, and then you can forget the number. 1 breath in, 1 breath out, and you can forget the number. If numbers feel too sharp, you can replace them with words that are softer. Inhale, exhale, rest. Inhale, exhale, rest. Now picture 3 quiet places from the night, one after the other, and let each one become simpler. First, the bakery doorway. Warm air behind wood, voices low, a bundle held close. Then let it blur until it becomes only warmth. Second, the bathhouse corridor. Cooling stone, a lamp steadied, the sense of safety returning. Then let it blur until it becomes only calm. Third, the stairwell lamp. A tiny flame fed, steps made safe, a building returning to sleep. Then let it blur until it becomes only stillness. Now let even stillness become a comfortable weight in the body. Let your forehead be smooth. Let your eyelids be heavy. Let your jaw be loose. Let your shoulders be wide and low. Let your hands be warm and heavy. Let your belly be soft. Let your legs be supported. Let your feet relax. If you notice any urge to check the time, you can let that urge pass. The night knows what it is doing. If you notice any urge to think ahead, you can let that urge pass too. Morning will arrive on its own, and you do not need to escort it. Now we can return to the phrase one last time, very gently. Complete enough. Your day is complete enough. Your effort is complete enough. Your rest can be complete enough too. And from here, you can let the words become background, like water sound in a courtyard, present but not demanding, until sleep arrives whenever it wants. For the next little while, we'll keep it simple. Lantern light, steady and warm. Stone steps, cool and reliable. A closed latch, calm and quiet. A fountain, water repeating softly. A page in a ledger, complete enough. Now we repeat, slower. Warm light, cool stone. Quiet latch, steady water. And again, warm light, cool stone. Quiet latch, steady water. If your mind tries to add details, you can let them fade. If your mind tries to solve something, you can set it down. Inhale, exhale, rest. Inhale, exhale, rest. Nothing needs attention right now. Nothing needs to be fixed right now. The night is doing its job, and you can let it. Complete enough, calm enough, safe enough. And if sleep is close, you don't need to reach for it. You can let it come to you. Imagine a lantern moving at walking pace, lighting only the next few steps, never demanding more. Doorways stay quiet, windows stay dark, and the city rests around you. If a thought appears, let it pass like a shadow at the edge of lantern light, appearing, softening, and fading. Water drips into a basin, one drop and then another, steady and ordinary. You don't need to count it. You can let it be background. Each drop is a quiet reminder that the night is still, and you can be still too. The ledger is closed now, and the page is complete enough. A smudge does not change the meaning. A small note restores clarity. Your mind can do the same, letting small imperfections become quiet notes you don't need to revisit tonight. Breathe in gently for 3 and out for 6, as if the exhale is smoothing a crease in cloth. No need to do it perfectly. The longer exhale is the signal, and the signal is safety. Picture the fountain again. Steady water in cool air, reflections moving slowly on stone. You don't need to see the whole courtyard. Let it be soft and simple until the words fade into background. One step, one breath, one quiet pause, and then another. The night repeats gently, without urgency. If you lose track of the steps, that's fine. Losing track is drifting. Imagine a closed door with a calm latch. Nothing forcing it open, nothing rattling it. The night stays polite. Your thoughts can stay polite too, arriving softly and leaving softly. A small circle of lamplight on stone, then a softer circle, then only the idea of warmth. You don't need detail. You only need calm, and calm can be simple. The city breathes the way you breathe. Small movements and then stillness. A hinge that squeaks and stops. A window that opens and closes, and then quiet again. Nothing demands attention. Dawn changes Rome slowly. Not bright at once, just softer gray, then lighter edges. You don't need to witness it. The night ends on its own, and sleep can arrive on its own too. Imagine the water clock dripping steadily, not as a timer you must watch, but as a sound that proves everything is moving slowly and safely. If your mind wanders, let it wander. The drip remains. Warm lamplight, cool stone, steady water sound. You don't need anything else. If you catch a sentence, fine. If you miss 5 minutes, even better. A quiet latch, a quiet corner, a quiet breath. Nothing needs to change quickly tonight. Let your attention rest where it is, without tightening around anything. Imagine the marketplace, empty and still. Awnings tied, ropes quiet. The future morning waiting at a distance. You don't have to go there yet. The river air feels cool and steady. The water moves without hurry. You can borrow that pace and let your thoughts move more slowly, too. A small correction is enough. A small note is enough. Complete enough is enough. Let that be the rule for the rest of the night. Imagine the lantern placed safely in its niche, not swinging, not demanding attention. Your mind can be placed gently, too, resting instead of moving. In for 3, out for 6. In for 3, out for 6. The exhale is longer because settling takes longer than rising. If a thought arrives, let it be a passerby on the street. Notice, allowed, and then gone. You don't need to follow it. The night repeats politely. The city repeats politely. Your breathing repeats